Welcome, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to back up your system to Amazon S3 using Restic. Restic is an open source backup utility written in Go that's free to use and compatible with all modern operating systems, Windows, Mac, and Linux. The homepage for Restic is restic.net, and it's the page I'm on right now. To get started, we first need to install Restic. And for this installation, I'm going to actually pull the sources or the binaries, the releases from the GitHub project. So let's go to the GitHub page, go to releases, and we'll find here the latest release right now is Restic 0.9.2. So we're going to scroll down. I'm going to get the Linux AMD 64 version because I'm going to do this tutorial in a Ubuntu Docker container. So I'm going to copy the link and we're going to change over here to our Docker container. So right now we are root, we're in the root directory, and let's go ahead and pull this down. So wget paste, cool. And then we will unzip it. Alrighty, and then we are going to copy this over to our user local bin folder, name the binary Restic so it'll be easier to get to without having to specify the path exactly. So we're going to actually move Restic to user local bin, and then we're just going to name it Restic. And then let's add the execute flag to it, user local. And now we should be able to run Restic version and confirm it's installed. Yes, version 0.9.2. and tells you what version of Go it was compiled with. Alrighty, so the next step is we need an S3 bucket to back up with. So I'm going to go back over to my browser, and I'm already logged into my AWS console and in my S3 management console. From here, we'll create bucket. Bucket name. Let's just call this backups hyphen and then Dennis. This has to be unique. And we'll click next. Options. You can turn on versioning if you want. Basically what that means is when you delete an object or you overwrite an object, you'll have multiple copies of it. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. The main issue with it is if you store a 1 gig file out there with versioning turned on and then restore that file with the same name as another 1 gig file, you'll now be storing both versions on AWS and getting charged for 2 gig. So on or off, it's your choice. Also, go ahead and turn on default encryption. Just use the standard AES 256. Click next. Permissions, nothing to really do here. Let's make sure we are not granting public access to your backup files. Next. And here's just an overview. Once again, public permissions disabled, versioning is enabled, and default encryption AES 256. And that's the encryption of storing the data on AWS's system. Restic does its own encryption on top of that. So create bucket. And now we have our bucket named Backups Dennis. The other thing we need to do is let's go create an IAM user dedicated for Restic. We don't want to use our own account for this because more likely our own account has full admin rights, and let's just be safe about this. So username is Restic. We just need programmatic access. Alrighty, we're going to attach an existing policy and then create policy. So in here, we'll go through the editor this time. So S3, actions. We need, let's see what we want to get here. List bucket, and we're going to need, let's see where that's at. We want to get bucket location. There it is. And this will be just for the bucket itself. All right, we have to choose our bucket. We'll add an ARN for that. Our bucket name is backups-Dennis. Add. And that's got that one. And let's see. We should be able to pull this down, add additional permissions. Once again, we're going to do S3. We want to do, okay, for read, we want to do get object. And write, we want to be able to delete the object, and we want to be able to put an object. Once again, this will be back at our specific, add an ARN. So the bucket name is backups-Dennis. The object is *any. Add. And now we can go look at this in the JSON, and it should be list bucket, get bucket location for that bucket. And then put object, get object, delete object for the objects within that bucket. Review policy, give it a name. We'll call it Restic backups-Dennis. No description, create policy. Now that that's done, we can go back over here to the console, I think. Refresh our policies. It went up one. Type in Restic, and there we go, Restic backups-Dennis. It's one we just created. Review, and create user. So that is created. We have this access key ID and the secret ID. We're going to need these for later. I'm just going to leave them right here for now. Let's go back over here. And now we're back at our container. And what we need to do now is we need to create an environment file, because Restic is going to need your AWS access key, your secret key, and a few other things. For now, we're going to start a file called .restic.env in our home directory. All right, let me get Vi installed real quick. Sorry about that. All right, now we should be able to do restic.env. Perfect. We're going to export AWS access key ID equals. We will copy this value. Export AWS secret access key, and that's this value. Oops. And then we're going to need to put two more items in here. One of them is Restic_repository, and that is going to be equal to S3 HTTPS s3.amazonaws.com/ and then our bucket name, which is backups-Dennis. And the last thing we need to do is give it a Restic password. And this is the encryption key that will be used to encrypt your backups. So for that, we need to go generate one. And there's plenty of password generators. Let's do the LastPass password generator. And we'll up this to, let's do 36 characters. And we can hit copy. No thanks. Come back over. And we'll put this in quotes just so there's no issue. You're going to want to back this password up somewhere. I'd suggest printing it out, writing it down somewhere, and storing it in a very safe location. Because if you do lose all the data on your hard drive, you will need this to restore any information. Without it, all your data is lost. The other thing I am going to do is let me just go back here and wrap all of these in quotes just to make sure we don't have any issue reading with this and escaping. It's just best practice. Alright, so with that now, I can right quit that out, and then I'm going to use the source command to bring this in. I don't like putting this in my .bash RC file simply because I don't like having these credentials and AWS, credentials always active in every session I get in. I like to choose when I use them and when they're active and when they're not. So I should be able to now do echo Restic repository, and there we go. So that actually did work. So now we're good for that. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and what they call initializing our repository on S3 for Restic. And it's a very simple command. All you really have to type is restic init, and it should do the rest. And I will actually show you what happens out on S3 when you do this. You only do this one time and one time only. There we go, created Restic repository, gave it an ID, says it created in our bucket. Also says, please keep your password. Your data will be lost if you lose your password. So let's go back over here to the S3 console. There we go. And let's go into our bucket. And you see now we actually have some data, a config file and keys. So now let's go back over here. We're going to create a file. I'm just going to echo hello world to our backup test file. And now what we're going to do is we're going to back that file up to Restic. So we will do Restic backup, and we just want to backup test. Should go through, open successfully, processed one file, 12 bytes in 3 seconds. If we go back over here to S3, we can refresh it. Boom, we now have data, index, keys, snapshots. A backup in Restic is referred to as a snapshot. You'll see shortly we're going to use that quite a bit. And then this is the data that they store. And everything is hashed and deduplicated. Test that out real quick to make sure I'm not lying here. So if we go back over here to data, we do realize we had 2 files. And that's it. So when I do this backup, we'll just redo the Restic backup. And we'll do backup test 2. We'll back up both of the files. And that's how you specify multiple files or multiple paths and just keep adding them to the list. So files 2 new, 0 unchanged, 0 modified, save 2 files, 24 bytes. Let's go over here and look. Data. Once again, we still only have 2 files because those files are the same. Now, if we want to look at the snapshots we have, we can type Restic snapshots. And it goes out there and it'll read the snapshots we have, tell you what host they came from, which this is just a randomly kind of generated Docker host name. You can see it here in my prompt. And then you can see the directory was root backup test directory or file. And then on the second backup, you can see it's backup test 2. Now what we'll do is let's go ahead and overwrite backup test 2 with some other data. Echo goodbye world. And we'll just overwrite backup test 2. We'll run another backup. Backup test 2. Let it run again. Alright, cool. Seems 1 changed, 1 unmodified. In that snapshot category, we go to data. If I refresh this, we should have more files out here now. So let's see, what we want to do here is let's go ahead and we're going to do a restore. Now when you restore, you actually tell it the target to restore to. So we'll make a directory here called restore. Alright, and then you will do a Restic. Well, before we do that, let's do Restic snapshots first. Okay, so there's our snapshots and we got the date. We want to restore this version here of backup test 2, which should still have hello world in it. So we can actually type Restic restore. We have to give it the snapshot ID, which is this little hash here. Copy and paste that. And then target, we're just going to tell it our target is restored. Yep, I've got something wrong here, so let's see. Restic restore help. It's probably snapshot ID or something. You just don't have a flag with it. You just give it the snapshot ID. So, take this out. Alright, so now let's go into restored. ls, we got both the files in there. And if I cat backup test2 out, there it is with hello world. I can back up. We can do Restic snapshots again. Restic restore. And we'll restore this one here where it should be different. And once again, we have to specify target restored. All right, so now if I go, I can just do cat restored backup test2 and goodbye world. So that's a good example. Our system is working. We are backing up data. One of the things you might want to do is remove these now that we've tested some stuff. If you want to do that, it's pretty simple. It's just a Restic forget, and then you have to give it either an individual backup ID, a snapshot ID, or you can give it a policy of what to keep. And so for this, I'll do keep tag, and we have applied no tags to our backups, so they don't have a tag. So I can make this basically keep tag anything and then prune, because that also tells it to delete the data off of S3. If you don't add prune to it, it'll actually keep the data out there on S3, but it will forget the snapshot and what files were out there. We'll hit that. Should go through. There it is. It went through and it looks like it cleaned up everything. So Restic snapshots. No snapshots. And if we go back out here, we should be able to refresh this, and we have no data. We've reclaimed that space. Now, you remember I mentioned if you enabled earlier versioning, those files are actually still out there because there's the deleted marker for it. So we could actually bring that back if we wanted to. Setting that is a personal preference. If you want to be cost effective, don't set it. So now let's go ahead and let's do a more realistic backup job. And for that, I'm going to back up the Etsy folder, the root folder, and then we're also going to go ahead and back up the user folder just to have some data to actually back up here. For this, instead of typing all of these out on a command line and having, Restic backup, Etsy, root, user, I'm going to create a file called Restic files that we're going to use to actually tell Restic to look there and get the list of files or directories to back up. By Restic files, and in here we're just going to do a separate line for each one of these. So write that out, and then we can type in, let's see, I'm going to actually cheat here and get the help again to make sure I don't get the flag wrong. But what we're looking at is files from Restic backup, files from, and we'll give it our local file. What we'll also do is we'll go ahead and tag this backup. And we'll just tag it as seed to say this is our first backup. We're seeding our repository. We'll hit enter. It opens up. It analyzes all the files, and now it's starting to upload. And it gives you a nice little ETA here of how long it's got. Right now we're looking at about a minute. I'll pause the video and then we'll start back up once this is complete. First backup just succeeded and got finished. Took a total of 54 seconds, it says here. 4,199 files, over 113 megabytes. And then we'll click back over here one more time. We'll refresh. And now we have a lot more data. So let's run this back up again real quick. And this time we'll tag it as incremental. We're going to stick around for this one because what happens is Restic will go through get its own little block, check file hashes, check on S3 to see if that hash already exists, and if so, then it won't upload that, and because it knows the data is already there. If a new file was created, then it would add it. This should go very fast for us. And we see it, and it's already done in 5 seconds. It's like everything was already out there. These files have been unmodified. There's no need for me to upload it. So then you can actually run Restic snapshots. There you go. We got the seed. We have the incremental. It shows what was included in each one. We got some good backups going. So now the final step would be doing this inside of a cron job. I'm running a Docker container here, so first I need to actually install cron. And then I can just run cron like that, and that'll start it running in the background. Final thing we want to do is actually we want to add this job to our cron tab. So we'll do cron tab -E. Delete all this out. We're going to have this run every, well, for our example, we'll just say every 2 minutes. And you're probably going to want to set that to every 15 on your own system. And what we're going to need to do is when cron runs, it will not have any of these environment variables in there. And cron does not even run a .bash or C file. So what we'll do here is we'll do a dot, which is the POSIX version of source command, which is what you've got to do. And we're going to tell it to read it from root and .restic.env. And that way we'll have all of our AWS access keys and other environment variables set. And then we can run Restic backup from files, and that is going to be also root restic.files. I do need to make one more change here, and that is I notice on my version of this Ubuntu version, user local bin is not actually in the path for cron. So the easiest solution is just specify it there, and we can write that out. And then, oh, the other thing I was going to add to this is let's go ahead and write out to an error log if anything happens. So root/restic.err, and then we'll have the rest of the output go to, I'm actually going to do a double arrow so it appends and just keeps adding to this file. And we can do root/restic.log. That way we can actually have something to look at when this goes. We'll write that out, and let's see, ls, okay, and date. What is the time right now? All right, so we've got about 1.5 minutes before that triggers. So once again, I'm going to pause the video. There we go. It just hit. So I should be able to run ls, and there we go. We got a Restic error and a Restic log. Now let's cat restic.log, and we got nothing. So we got an error. Let's see what our error was from. Unknown flag from files. So I guess it was from file, wasn't it? Let's see, history, grep, from. Files from, okay, my bad. So cron tab -E. All right, write this out. And once again, we'll wait until the next one. I'll go ahead and pause the video again. There we go, it just came out anyway, so we will cat out the restic.log. We could have tailed that file also. Okay, and there we go. It found 20 new files, 4 changes, 4,195 unmodified. Did find some changes in that because we edited our cron tab and a few other things. We installed cron. So yeah, we do expect it to find some new files there. There we go. With that, it should automatically do this every 2 minutes with our thing. Since we know it's working now, we'll just go in here one last time. We'll modify this to be every 15 minutes. It's kind of quick. You could make it every hour if you wanted to. If you wanted to make it every hour, what you would do is you would actually have this read. There we go. And now it'll run every hour at the 0 minute mark. That's an option you can do. Like I say, without it, I'm just going to do every 15 minutes. Right, quit. And we'll also just verify real quick because we know what was in there before. that our restic.error file only has that one line, so nothing else has been added to it. And we'll just verify real quick before we close out that Restic snapshots does show the one that happened at the 20-minute mark. And there it is right there. Perfect. We did forget the tags. We can go back in there and add that to actually tag that properly. And I will do that now. I can call it incremental, or I could call it whatever I really wanted to, but we'll just tap this in right here. Tag, and I'll just call it incremental. If you ever decide you want to back up some more files or quit backing up some files, edit that restic.files file, take out user, and it'll quit backing that up. That data will still be out there in the system though, because it is used by other snapshots. But if you go through and delete those snapshots and put the prune command on, it will then delete all the data for user, but still keep the etc and root. So thanks everybody. I'm hoping to do a follow-up video on showing how to do this with backing up EFS, Amazon Elastic File System. That doesn't come with the built-in backup, and Restic works perfect for that. Also plan on showing how to do this on a Western Digital MyCloud personal NAS server. I have one of these at the house. Do not have a good method of backing it up to the cloud, and I plan on putting this on there, and then that data I know will be stored up in S3. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.